Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Patty Coons-Howard.
Thank you, Kim, and a special thanks to Anne-Marie, Amy, and Rich. It was great of them to share their stories because it helps us remember who we are and what we do in that moment or scenario, and reaffirms what we know about emergency nurses. We are a lot of things. We're tough, we're opinionated, we're vigorous advocates for our patients and their families, but we always put the patients above everything. And while they spoke as a part of our unique emergency nursing family, our keynote speaker admittedly knew not that much about us not that long ago. However, today, acclaimed filmmaker Carolyn Jones stands before you in awe of what each of you does to selflessly serve those in need of care. She spent a year in emergency departments across this country and sitting in that front row of the chaos that we know is just another shift. The film she and her team have created, which we can't wait to share with everyone in the not too distant future, is the most wonderful reflection of emergency nurses that you will ever see. I think you will be as moved as I was to see us celebrated in such a thoughtful way. Please welcome Carolyn Jones.
Holy smokes, that's a lot of emergency nurses out there. Close to 4,000, is that right? It does beg the question, if you're all here. I'm not sure who's out there taking care of the rest of them, but it's wonderful to see you all. I can't tell you what a privilege it is to be here with you. It's just such an honor for me. You know, I've spent the last 7 or 8 years digging around in the world of nurses, and so when I was first asked to do this film, I thought, well, I have an inroad. I understand who nurses are. I had no idea who emergency nurses were. You guys are badass. It's incredible who you are and what you do, and it knocked my socks off from the beginning. The very first night that we were filming for this project was in St. Joe's Hospital in Paterson, New Jersey. And boy, it was quite a night. We were there, my whole team was there, and we didn't witness a lot, but we got an opportunity at one moment during the evening to hear the sounds of a family who had lost a small child. And the nurses that were caring for this family, and the grief was like overwhelming. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And then someone came into a different area of the emergency department, and I watched the nurses go from that room across the emergency department to the other room. And they kind of brushed a tear as they did it and just got on with it. I was now in a puddle on the floor thinking, how in the world am I ever going to shoot this film? I don't understand what you do. People don't begin to understand. So I'm kind of an outsider looking in, and I've been looking in for the last 2 years, and I want to share with you what I've witnessed and what I've learned. So these are our teachers. These are some of the nurses we met across the country as we worked on this project. A lot of these people are here with you today, and I hope if you see them, you will thank them for letting us barge into their lives with our cameras and our microphones. And now I want to show you the first couple of minutes of our film. This isn't even finished yet, this film, and we're working on it madly, and hopefully it's going to be, well, no, for sure, it will be ready by Nurses Week of 2020, and we're really excited about that. So right now, I'm going to show you the first couple of minutes, and I think it'll give you a really good sense of what the film's about and what it captures and the journey that we're going to take. So here we go.
You know where you are? Just know that I'm here for you. We'll get you through this. 46-year-old male came in with a gunshot to her head. You know, I can't explain to anybody how the patient's facing with one hand, and she was really to me, she was dying. It's about as real life as it gets.
We are the mirror of society. If there's an Ebola scare, if there's a bus that turns over, if there's the flu season, where do they go? They come here. We are the safety net.
I think most of us are very drawn to the adrenaline. We're drawn to the fast pace. We're drawn to the unexpected. Either it fits your soul or it doesn't. The trauma surgeon is saying, get the patient to OR now. The care is not based on whether you're insured or not. In every emergency room across the United States, we are obligated to care for every patient who walks through our front doors.
We're the ones that connect the patients first, and then we're the ones that advocate for them.
We're probably the best thing that's happened to them on their worst day. We're in the trenches together, you know, the nurses, the doctors, the techs, everybody works together for the patient.
A lot of stuff that comes through here, you wish you don't see it here. The traumatic events, the gunshot wounds.
I walk in here and we'll have another overdose death. This opioid epidemic is a crisis.
All of a sudden, it happens bottom line where we are boarding that patients here in the emergency department.
There is no other place for them, and so they come to us.
As emergency nurses, we are on the front line. And when a patient arrives in the hospital, we're going to do everything we can in this moment of time to save their lives.
Swelling and ecchymosis to the right orbit.
Abrasions over the bilateral.
Right back at you. You know, it's your world that we're capturing with this film, and that's really our desire to tell the story right and to get this right. So this is Kathleen Robinson, who I'm very excited is here with us today, and she was our guide in many ways. You know, it's a really good lesson to kind of look at how hard it was for us to really understand what's going on in the emergency departments, because I think it reflects really well what's going on with society and how little people know what's really happening in the emergency departments. And so we were excited to do this because it was the place where everything collides. You've got the opioid crisis and gun violence and behavioral health and people without insurance. And so many issues were all coming all together in the emergency department, and that's what we were trying to capture. So, and Kathleen was our guide as we went along. You know, there were things that were really hard for us to get our brain around, and I found that we would go back over and over and talk about those topics. So she becomes the thread that holds this film together, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm going to show you a trailer, not a trailer, I'm going to show you a clip now from the film. We had the opportunity to meet someone who had overdosed in the emergency room, and I want to show you this clip, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about it after.
One of the things that all of you are going to encounter at some point in your practice here is an opiate overdose. The reality of the opioid epidemic, it is all across the U.S. It is every race, every age group. It is your 55-year-old grandmother. It is your 12-year-old child in an elementary school. It is pervasive. Opioids don't discriminate. So one of the best tools that we have is the ability to reverse an overdose using Narcan. You need to be able to give it quickly. So we use something called a MAD device, okay? So if they are actually having an overdose, you're probably already having to open their airway because they're probably not breathing on their own.
I almost died today. When I opened my eyes and I saw paramedics, I didn't even really have any sense of where I was or how I had sort of gotten to where I was. But by the grace of God, somebody saw me and called them in. My dad was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, and my mom had a stroke and seizure when I came home one day. The oxys, more so than the pain aspect of things or even getting high, it was emotionally numbing. It got out of control. So I tried to stop, and that was when I started experiencing withdrawal. That's like getting hit with a bomb.
You know, people don't wake up instantaneously from Narcan. If it's IV, it'll be faster. This works a little more slowly, but you may get them waking up frantic, panicking. Sometimes they vomit, sometimes they can start to scream at you. But the first thing you can say to them is,
You almost died today. We just saved your life. Are you ready for treatment? Are you ready to get clean? And that's something we can help them with.
I ended up going into a program, and I've been clean since. Unfortunately, it's sort of back to square one.
And the success rates of keeping somebody clean, it depends on having follow-up. And otherwise, it's a revolving door, guys. We had one patient overdose 5 times in one day until finally we committed him because he was going to kill himself.
I can't even imagine what this would have done to my family. I mean, I'm supposed to sort of try and be the rock in this situation when mom and dad are having tough times. So I'm very grateful for that I'm still here.
We are seeing too many young people die, and I feel so sad for the families because the ripple effect of having a loss of a young person, it's tragic. It's tragic, and it's preventable.
Thank you. So one of the things that we started to realize right off the bat was that you're dealing with all of these issues in the emergency department, and there aren't enough programs in the community to really help people as they get out of the emergency department. So one of the reasons that we went to St. Joe's was because we were really interested in their relationship with an organization called Eva's Village. So we went to Eva's Village because they have this liaison with the hospital where people that are ex-addicts come into the hospital and work with people who have overdosed and are in the hospital. And there we meet Anthony. So Anthony is this young man. I had no idea. You know, this is a documentary film. It's kind of a journey. You don't know who you're going to meet or what they're going to say. But we met Anthony, and I sat down and I started talking to him. And it had turned out that he had gone to St. Joe's twice, had been revived with Narcan, and the second time he had gotten his jacket on, he was going to get released, and it was the evening, and he was ready to go. And a nurse came in, and she said, just give me one night. Just stay one night here at the hospital, and tomorrow someone from Eva's Village will come in and talk to you, and they can help you. They can guide you over this hump. They can get you over the hump. And somehow he heard her that night. Somehow she got through to him, and he stayed. And he went to Eva's Village the next day after meeting this gentleman named Terry who came to help him, and it changed the entire trajectory of his life. And this was going to start to be a theme for me that I started to recognize, that you make a difference, these small moments of connection and humanity that happen in the emergency department. I don't even know if you realize what lives you touch and how far those changes go. But with Anthony, it was profound. Now, one of the fun things about making a film like this is we get to track people down, and I'm like, who's the nurse? I got to meet this nurse. So we found her, and she came out to meet Anthony. Now, for Anthony, this was a moment etched in time, right? He thought of her as kind of his savior. And when we introduced him, and the reason why this isn't in the film, it was actually really weird and awkward because she didn't remember him, and he had remembered her, and he was like all excited, and it was this super awkward hug, so we can't really use it. But the thing was, it was an amazing moment because it meant so much to him, and she actually kind of got through it in a really graceful way, and it was really marvelous to witness. This is our team there. This is how we started out. Take a look at this picture for a second. So Yaka is here. He's our cameraman, and I'm lucky enough to get to work with Yaka and Lisa, who's over there on the right-hand side. I've been working with both of them for almost 10 years, and we've done all of the nurse work together. And you'll notice we all look kind of still perky, right? We all still look like we're human beings and ready to attack this film about emergency nurses and all gung-ho. Your very own Kim Russo is there in the middle. I've got my arm around the security person. You know, so we're all ready to go. But watch as this presentation goes on because we all sort of start to deteriorate as we get into your world. It just gets really funky by the end. This is Kim Russo, who also is here today, and I'm excited about that. You know, there were a lot of ideas that got busted while we were working. You know, I have some preconceived notions that I think reflect the American public really well. One of the things that we don't know about are these returning people that go in and out of the emergency room all the time. So I was kind of surprised when we were there that a patient came in and waves to Kim and says, "Hey, Kim." And I'm like, And Kim's like, hey, Patty. You know, and she's like, how you doing? You know, and Patty said, well, I tried to detox myself and I couldn't make it. And then they go into the room together and I'm watching Patty and Kim together, and Patty looks at Kim and says, boy, I'm so glad you chose me tonight. And Kim said, yeah, it's your lucky night. And you know, this whole conversation in the middle of the emergency room was so interesting to me, but it broke through this idea of, oh, so there really are people that come back over and over and over, and that's part of your day as well. This is Kim with Patty. Just such a sweet moment at the end of getting the IV, and Patty's like, you got it on the first go? And Kim's like, yeah. And she's like, you go, buddy. Kim's like, yeah, buddy. And I'm like, wow, this is just so strange. So here's another concept that got busted completely. So as a member of the public, and we hear like, you know, people coming into the emergency department, whether they should be in the emergency department or not, who knows. Kim's doing triage at this moment, and this guy comes in, and he has poison ivy. And I'm standing off by the side. You know, there's another guy in the waiting room, and his arm's like hanging by a thread, and I'm like, really? Poison ivy? You know? And so I ask him if I can talk to him, and I go over and I talk to him, and I sit down. And so English is his second language, and so we're having a little bit of trouble communicating, but I look at him and I say, so, sir, did you go to a pharmacy? You know, a little judgmental, a little tone in my voice probably. And he pulls out his phone, and he shows me on the phone a picture of calamine lotion and a picture of Benadryl. And he said, yeah, I went to a pharmacy, and I called my doctor, but my poison ivy started, and it was just in one place in my arm. And now it's all over my body, head to toe. And it's Saturday, and his doctor, when he called him, said, go to the emergency room. So it's definitely not his fault. I'm clear on that. It was definitely not his fault. And he did need to be there because there was no place else for him to go, I guess. But it was an interesting thing to get busted in my head. Okay, so wait a minute, how does that happen? It's just good for people to understand that. So this idea of behavioral health, boy, as Americans, we don't like to talk about this, right? We just do not want to know about this. And it was a very difficult story for us to tell because obviously you can't really consent a patient who has a behavioral health issue, right? I mean, it's, you don't feel good about that, and they need to be very aware of what they're signing up for. But Brittany here was aware, and we were able to talk to her, and it was very productive. She had tried to commit suicide that night. And she was in the emergency department. And we discovered as we traveled across the country that every hospital has a different way of handling this. And very often there's one room or a group of rooms that are designated for the behavioral health patients. And they're always full. What's that about? They're always full in every single hospital. So then the only thing that you can do is put them in the hallways so that they're safe and you can keep an eye on them. Now, I don't know very much about this, but I've got to believe for a behavioral health patient that being out in the open in the hallway with the bright lights and the people running by and all the sounds and everything going on probably isn't the best place for them. But man, what an issue, what a problem that we have to deal with. And I hope with this film, like I said, even though we can't always dig into all of these topics, that they're talking points, that we get people thinking about, oh, wow, I didn't really think about behavioral health patients in the emergency department before. The American public doesn't know this stuff. You know, when I started working on the film, maybe it's a strange analogy, but I started to think of the emergency department as like a fortress. This big fortress with a moat all around it filled with alligators. And there's only one way in and there's one way out. And all of you that are in that fortress, you can't talk about what you do. You go out, even if you run into someone that you cared for earlier that day in the supermarket or wherever, you can't say, how's your leg or how's your mom? So it's a very insulated place. So what happens there in there stays in there. And it makes for a difficult situation for the public to really understand what's going on in there, which is why it's been a privilege to have a glimpse into your world and try to capture some of these stories. So then we went to Kentucky after New Jersey. So This was a wonderful part of the country to go to, and great because we got to work with a fantastic hospital and work with Patty there, and we met Michelle. So there were so many things that happened in this emergency department that night, but one of the ones that really struck me was when we had a chance to meet two gentlemen who came in and didn't have insurance. So here is another kind of idea that I had beforehand that got busted. So we're there, and there's so much going on in this emergency department. I mean, it is lively. Some of the ones that we went to, you know, nothing was going on. I'm there with my crew. Actually, one of the kind of unattractive things that happened to us while we were working on this film was that the crew would come to the emergency department and nothing would happen. We'd have like a quiet night. Everybody said, whatever you do, don't say the word quiet, because as soon as you say quiet, all this mayhem happens. I said the word quiet like 900 times on this project. I found myself like sitting in the back of the emergency department like, come on, bring us something good that we can capture that will show the full extent of what you're able to do. That's really what we wanted to do. So in Kentucky, we particularly had a lot of different cases to look at, but I chose this one because I really had a preconceived notion about who doesn't have insurance in our country. So we're standing in the emergency department. This guy on the left comes in, and he's covered from head to toe in grease. I mean, he smells like a gas station. He's wearing his gas station attendant outfit, and his thumb is like bleeding and hanging on really by a thread. And my initial reaction was to like back away. You know, he smelled funky, it was a little scary. And then all the emergency nurses are going towards him, right? Which is just kind of something that you do naturally. Some of your speakers this morning talked about not being judgmental and being able to treat everyone exactly the same. And I witnessed that over and over and over and so impressed by it. But anyway, back to these two guys. So I've decided to go talk to them, and I find out that they don't have insurance, but they are both working at an auto repair shop. And they're both dads, they have kids, and they can't afford insurance, and they've done the math. And basically, when I asked him about what happened to him that day, he said, you know, I almost was going to fix this with super glue at the auto repair shop. So do people really do that, like fix their wounds? That's insane. I never heard of such a thing. I was like, wait a minute, you were going to glue your thumb back on? And he said, yeah, he would have done it just to avoid having to go to the emergency room and have to pay the cost of that. So, you know, there was a copay, and he was going to get on a payment plan to pay to have this done. But they stood there and did the math for me, how much they would pay to pay for insurance all year long, and how much it was going to cost to get this fixed. And I understand now why they super glue in there, because it was a dilemma. And how could we have gotten to this point in this country where two guys who are probably working 6 days a week, 12-hour days, can't afford insurance? And we need to talk about it. That's the main thing. We need to talk about it. We need to understand who they are, and we need to help them. So here's another topic that blows my mind that I had no idea that was going on. Karina talks about workplace violence. Are you kidding me? What are we thinking that we would have any violence to towards the people who are caring for us? This baffles me. While we were working on the project, Lisa Frank, who's the producer, she kept saying, we should like imagine a day in the life of America without any emergency nurses. What would happen, right? What would we do? We would be utterly screwed. We truly would. We truly would. And so the fact that there is even such a thing as workplace violence against emergency nurses, that just blows me away. People need to understand. People need to know what you do. They need to see it, and they need to understand it so that they understand how silly that is and how it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Kai. I haven't seen Kai yet. I think he's here somewhere. Yay, there's Kai. So this is another topic that really got to me, and I don't think we, the public, think about this very often, but Kai told us a story about how one day in the ER, 3 children died, and he had to care for each one of them, one after the other. And then he talked about the nightmares that he had for 2 weeks after that. And I've got to believe that every single one of you has some degree of post-traumatic stress. The things you see, you know, the things I've seen just doing this film have aged me like 10 years. The things that you see on a daily basis, how you deal with this, it comes back to this fortress idea. You're all in here, and thank God you have events like this where all of you can gather and share your stories and be here for one another, because we really don't understand what you do and what you're going through. And to have Kai talk about how he felt about dealing with those children, I mean, that's enough it's overwhelming. As an outsider. So here's a group shot. Now look carefully at this group shot. Go back to the beginning when we were looking all perky, like, oh, this is going to be a great film. So Lisa, who has the most engaging smile on the planet, all of a sudden is looking a little strained there. This is the middle of the night, by the way. I would like for you to recognize how perky Patty and the 3 nurses look. I mean, they all got it going on, right? They're all like, look at Michelle. She's kind of like, yeah, you know. And we're just, look at me. I'm hanging on to both Lisa and Patty, like, get me out of here. And Yaka just looks dazed at this point. So we're starting to, like, it was so much to take in a short amount of time to try to understand your world. So then we went to Dallas, and that was a wonderful journey and an opportunity to visit another hospital where we met Nancy Pidcock. Now, you want to talk about, I should let everybody applaud every time I say one of these names, but you're going to, yes, there you go. So Nancy is a sexual assault nurse examiner. And, yeah, right? I didn't know anything about this. People don't know anything about this. We didn't know that we needed this program. I mean, if behavioral health is tough to talk about, sexual assault and human trafficking, not too many people are talking about this. So to have someone who's really devoted to helping those patients get the care that they need is really, really, it was powerful to get a chance to talk to her and hear the stories she shared. This is Cole Edmondson, who helped bring that SANE program to Texas Health and did a wonderful job with that. You know, we saw different hospitals trying to deal with these issues, and the thing about that arrangement there was that I think they got an endowment to kind of secure a part of the emergency department, and it felt different than the rest of it, so that if someone was coming in and had been assaulted, that they could go to a private place and have a certain kind of help that they needed. It was very, very effective. And this is Galina. So Galina is here with us today, too. Galina came to this country from Peru. And she learned English when she was here and later in life, which I can attest to is one of the most difficult things ever. So I think she has a particular affinity to be able to really connect to someone in their own language. So I'm going to show you a clip from the film now with Galina.
Can you tell me your name? Jose, do you know what happened?
Yeah.
Do you remember why you got in an accident?
Why?
Why, yeah, what happened?
I don't know.
Can you raise this arm up? Keep it up. Don't let it fall. Keep it up, up. Touch my hand. Move your toe. Wiggle your toes. Your toes.
We have this stroke scale that we do. Smile, raise your eyebrows, raise your arms, raise your legs. Tell me these words.
¿Habla español, señor? ¿Quiere que hable mejor en español o en inglés?
Español.
Español, ok. ¿Recuerda lo que pasó? ¿Que estaba manejando?
Sí.
Y uno, okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. ¿Y qué pasó?
Le pegué a alguien por atrás. No, nada más, es que...
He said he was driving okay, and he make a U-turn, and he didn't see a car. But he's having some double vision.
I wonder if the car came from the left side.
Maybe he's diabetic, and he has not been taking his medicines keto now for 3 to 5 days. I always tell my coworkers I'm a qualified bilingual interpreter for the hospital, and I'm here. Help me to translate for consent for surgery. Any little things you feel like you need me to talk to face personally, I'm here. Su azúcar está no controlada y eso es porque usted tiene mala la visión. Le estamos dando la medicina que le dije, que le expliqué temprano. Okay.
Sí, le habló a mi hermano.
Ya llamé a su hermano y su hermano está en camino. Okay. I'm trying always my best to take care of them, but sometimes it's hard because you gotta move to the new patient that's coming, who's sicker, who's critical.
So I wanted to focus on this story for a moment because it's one of these moments of just beautiful humanity in the middle of the emergency department as we were witnessing this mayhem all around us. Now, we were there. I had gotten consent from this patient. He came in from an accident, and it seemed as though we were communicating okay. He seemed to understand what he was signing. He seemed to agree. The doctors and the nurses were all talking to him. But clearly, he had had a stroke and a car accident, and nobody could quite figure out what happened first. And so they were talking, and just in the midst of it, in the most graceful, dignified way, Galina goes over and she says, "Excuse me, sir, would you prefer to speak in Spanish or in English?" It was just such a wonderful way of dealing with it. And the floodgates just opened. He was able to share that he was a diabetic and that he hadn't had his medicine. He told us he couldn't afford his medicine, and he hadn't had it for 3 or 4 days, and that's what caused the blurred vision and therefore the accident. Galina's moment changed the whole trajectory of how he was cared for. And that was just this moment where you, as emergency nurses, within that fortress, take this moment to connect to a human being, and it makes all the difference in the world. So I love this theme of yours. I'm sorry, Galina, to put your whole family up here on display, but you know, this whole theme of I am, I love it, because again, this fortress, we started to just see the nurses within this unique environment of the emergency department. So to see you outside, I mean, Galina had gone through a whole shift and came out, and there's her husband and her parents and her 2 children, and she was off to have her regular life. And it struck us because we had just been in that fortress ourselves for so long at this point. So early on in the project, Jeff Solheim had recommended to us to get a flight nurse on board. And this was a great idea because we don't really think about all the different kinds of emergency nursing. And this gave us an opportunity to go to Oregon and to meet Dee Dee. And to find and meet patients who are sometimes living 500, 600 miles away from the closest healthcare facility. So meeting Dee Dee was kind of a wonderful experience. Yes, let's give it, yeah. Talk about badass. I love that outfit. I mean, she was just so had it going on. But she, and I wish I could show you clips of everything. Eventually this film will come out and you'll get to see it because it's a wonderful sequence. But I don't have time for all of it, but suffice it to say that getting a chance to hear Dee Dee's story and travel with her as she picked up a patient was really fantastic. And again, she let us kind of cross the boundary out of the world of emergency nursing and into the world. She let us interview all of her family members on the front yard, and then we followed her into what she was doing in her spare time, working at a soup kitchen. Now, I don't know how you do what you do. I can't even begin to understand how you do what you do, but your involvement with the community and your ability to connect, and you know what we need better than anybody, which is why a huge reason I do what I do is to raise your voice. I'm not your voice. I just want to hand you all the mic. I don't want to speak for you. I want to create a situation where people are coming to you to ask you questions about all of these unbelievably important topics in our country. So here's Bonnie. We next went to Detroit, which was exciting and a little bit hair-raising, I have to say. So we get there, and one of the first patients that comes in is a woman who has been mauled by pit bulls. we're just watching this stuff. She was able to consent, and she was willing to be a part. She didn't want to show her face right at that moment, but she was happy for us to tell her story. You know, I think people want their stories told. And so she came in, and I mean, this woman had cuts and bites kind of everywhere. It was intense. We could barely watch it. Well, Yaka was really good. He kept getting in there with the camera, which is kind of amazing. And so we captured it, but it was stunning. And so here's this woman. I kept putting myself in her position. She's been through this horrifying experience. She's brought into the emergency department. There are like 20 people all around her. And in the middle of it, you hear Bonnie say, "Stephanie, I got you. I got you." And then she takes a little sponge with a little liquid and puts it on her lips. And it's exactly what Stephanie needed to take a breath and have a connection to a human being. And I don't know how you know how to do these things at the given moments that you choose to do them, but they really matter. And here's Cheryl. So, you know, there's a lot of gun violence in Detroit, and we wanted to have an opportunity to capture that. And the way we kind of focused on Eva's Village in New Jersey about the opioid crisis, we wanted to kind of focus on a community organization that was doing something about violence in Detroit, and Cheryl was our bridge. We had the opportunity to meet her as she went and gathered high school students. Now, Cheryl talks to students of all ages about anti-violence and violence prevention. But she brought these students into the emergency department, and Bonnie and Cheryl told them what happens when you get a gunshot wound. And it was scary. I mean, I was looking at the faces of these kids, and what you can't see in this photograph, but is here, we were standing in the morgue, which, by the way, that just smells so funky down there. What is that smell? I don't know what that smell is, but to stand in front of this and see, like, there were bodies in there, you know, and here are all these high school students that are looking at that and how it affected them. I know she got through to those students. I know they heard her loud and clear. So then we were able to have the opportunity to consent this gentleman who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time and took a bullet in Detroit. And I'm going to show you a clip from this, and you'll meet the nurse, Rob.
I've been doing night shift here for close to 6 years now. It's very raw here, right? It's very in your face, the traumatic events, the gunshot wounds. You just accept it, really. You have to accept it, right? You got a job to do.
Oh, that's level one. You got level one. Level one trauma. We good.
Hey. We're gonna take care of you, okay? Okay. Just lay down. Just lay down.
I got a kid, man.
It's okay. Hey, you're good.
Any medication? No medication.
Do you have a blood pressure yet?
Yep, it's coming right now.
I got your wife. She's all right, okay? She's safe and she's
She has a 14 right upper bicep. You're doing real good, okay? How many kids you got, man?
One.
Girl, boys?
A girl.
Nice, man. What's her name?
Thank you.
Most of the individuals that come here, they really need someone just to listen to them and make decisions from there. Because a lot of times what you see on paper is not what you're walking into that room. We got to get a chest x-ray from you, okay?
Okay. I just want to know if I'm okay.
You're doing very well right now. We just want to make sure that there's no internal bleeding going on. Hey, you're going to see your kid again, I promise.
Yeah.
Okay?
Most definitely, man.
Most definitely.
Okay.
X-ray?
I lost my parents at a young age. My mom to cancer. My daddy was murdered. He got robbed. Somebody shot him and killed him. I just can't believe this happened to me.
You want to make sure you don't get any nasty infections, all right? I got you. I'm right here for you.
You don't close these up, okay? We just clean them out real good.
As long as I know I'm gonna see my daughter again, I'm okay. I gotta see her turn 18. I got to.
So I'll get you cleaned up. I'll get you some fresh sheets. Okay, make you look presentable so your girl can come in here and see you, okay?
Okay.
All right. A lot of stuff that comes in here, you wish you don't see again, obviously. Everything you see in the news today, you get in this ER. But we're not just a reflecting mirror. There's deeper issues in the community that have to be dealt with. And it starts with the ER being a bridge.
I think because of the work that you do and the things that you see, you really are in a unique position to be able to have these moments of insight and words of wisdom that it's just, I'm so devoted to getting these stories out there and having people outside of this room, outside of the fortress, really see what you do and who you are and how you touch us. Okay. So this is in the middle of the night in Detroit, and things have gotten a little bit worse now, I think. Liz Littlejohn is here from the hospital, and I wish Lacey was, but they were guiding us through. This is, again, late at night. Yaka's, I don't know what kind of expression that is on Yaka's face. Lisa has now stopped smiling. She stopped smiling like a week ago, and that was it. And I just look absolutely exhausted. You know, I think we just don't know what you're dealing with. It was the middle of the night. We were on a night shift. It was so otherworldly that we actually went into the waiting room and we all did headstands. We just couldn't even get our brains around what you're dealing with. So this is Yaka and Lisa and I turning ourselves literally upside down to try to get through the rest of that night. After we left Detroit, we went on to Burlington, Vermont, which was a completely different feeling, a completely different vibe of any place else that we had gone. And that was the objective of this, was to really be able to show people what it was like in an urban environment, in a rural environment, what it's like in the country where you don't have health care anywhere close to you. And Vermont was just kind of the other end of the spectrum. We didn't really know what we were going to find there. But one of the people that we met was Travis. I'm not sure if Travis is here today, but I hope he is. So in preparation to talk to all of you today, I kind of dug up my notes from, we would go on a trip and I would come back and I would write these notes to the editor. And I was reading through those, like, what were my first impressions? Well, I came back from Vermont and I said, you know, we met this guy, Travis, and he is really hopeful. He has so many ideas. He has ideas about the opioid crisis. He has ideas about behavioral health. And they're really smart, and they make a lot of sense. And I do feel some hope. And what an extraordinary place to go, to the emergency room, to find this kind of innovative thinking. So I came back from it being very excited about meeting Travis. And I have an opportunity to meet Minika and a patient. So I'm going to show you another clip from the film as Minika cares for this gentleman.
Take your time and have a seat.
Move too fast.
That was a nice dressing. Who put that together?
Me and the wife.
Excellent.
Me and the wife. She does the most of it. But I told her wrap it good and tight.
How'd you do this?
No.
No blower. Oh, yeah.
Blower itself was in neutral.
Yeah?
I put my hand in the chute and I thought it was soft.
Oh.
There's a lot of why. You're like, where you roll your eyes and go, really? At what time did you ever think that this was a good idea?
Shouldn't have had my hand in there.
In there in the
anyway.
first place, yes, sir.
That's number one. You can pull that one out.
Now, let's not pull. We'll leave it in place for right now.
Having been in the game for a long time, I have found the sitting and chatting just with a patient stunning what you'll find out.
So what do you do for Christmas with grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-greats?
Well, we send them birthday cards and all that stuff, you know. But
Now, do they live around you, or
no.
all kind of like went poof,
all over.
go forth and multiply? Did they do that? So do you have any grandkids around that could do the snow blowing for you?
There's a huge difference as to what nursing was 31 years ago compared to now. We have become a society of immediate gratification. I think that has a lot to do with our technology. The elderly generation is just very grateful that they are being taken care of.
So I'm gonna numb just the fingers.
You know, burns. You doing okay?
Yeah, feeling better.
Excellent.
Somewhere in the last 20 years, the concept of pain has changed.
None of this is hurting you?
No, it ain't
No?
hurting. You just feel numb now, and it's
Perfect.
you feel numb.
Perfect. Numb is good.
Like when they're froze, right?
I remember when the pain scale, came out. Every nurse in this hospital had to go to a special session where we were educated on the pain scale. And any pain over 4 needs to be treated. You have an old Vermont farmer who's having a heart attack, but you have to ask that pain scale. So, sir, on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 no pain, 10 the worst pain, where are you right now as you're wheeling them, to the door? Oh, honey, it's just some heartburn. It's a 4. I'm like, gee, you have to respect the patient. It's not my perception, it is their perception.
So Minica got me thinking a lot about the older generation versus the younger generation, and you know, it's someone said earlier that everybody comes into the emergency department looking for a turkey sandwich. I didn't even know about that. And, you know, there is this sense of entitlement. There is this thing that happens, and we witnessed it too. You know, I watched that gentleman with the fingernail and how he handled all of that. He was so stoic, and he was so thankful, and he was so nice about it all. It does remind me that as we were doing this film, we had a lot of footage that was a lot gorier than anything that ends up in the film. And in case you're wondering about that, we would do these kind of test groups in New York City where we would gather people together to watch the film. And I knew that if people were all watching the film like this, that we had gotten a little too gory. And so there were a lot of moments that we kept having to dial it back. As soon as I would see somebody's eye go up, like, oh, that's too, but we did leave in that fingernail because I just thought we had to have a little something like that. So it's not much, but it's a little nod to it. But the thing that struck me about what, I think it's all tied to workplace violence as well, that how Minica talked about, you know, kind of how it's a problem with society. It's not just a problem in the emergency department. It's who we've become. And you know, I have found an amazing shortage of decency in this country right now, but not here, not in this room. There's an amazing amount of decency in this room in the way that you care for all of us. So help me show it. Help me get it out there. I think this film shows that over and over and over with every single nurse that we were able to capture. So our last visit was to Iowa. Is Jen here? Yes, okay, good. So we go to Iowa, and I gotta admit, we're all, Yaka and Lisa and I, we're all from New York, and we're all just a little bit jaded, so we're like, wow, it's the country. And Yaka gets the camera out, and he's standing up there, and we're focused on the cows. Yes, there are cows out here. It was so wholesome, we didn't know what to do with ourselves. And then we met Jen. And we met Jen in the emergency department. And she was remarkable. Now, you know, here we had been in Detroit, and their gunshots had come in, and we'd been in Kentucky where we'd seen a lot of action, and we'd been in New Jersey that was the craziest waiting room ever. And here we are in Iowa. And I've got my team out there, and so this is one of those moments where you're like, somebody bring me a farming accident or something. Just give me a little something so I get to capture the full extent of what nurses do. But no, nothing much was happening. But then and a kid came in with appendicitis, and I'm like, appendicitis, that's not gonna do it. So, I know it sounds horrible. It's time for this project to be over because I've turned into this odd person who writes for these things. It's terrible. But anyway, we meet Jen, and I have to say that watching Jen with this patient, this happens to be one of the most beautiful moments of nursing I have ever witnessed in my life. And I have just spent the last 8 years in the world of nursing, but this takes it all. So take a look at this.
Is it really sore on your leg?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, you take the door. You got it? Down here. I got you. Okay. Does this leg hurt more, or does this leg hurt more? This leg hurts more, and it hurts from here to here.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna draw a bunch of labs and then kind of go from there.
Take another look here.
It's okay. Should we sing a song? Would that make it better? Should we make it a country song?
Yeah.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain, Shenandoah River. Life is older, older than the trees. Blowing like the breeze, country
Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home, country roads.
Thank you. You can all sing like that, right? I mean, it was extraordinary. Listen, it's been such an honor to get to tell your story. I hope we're getting it right. It's wonderful to be here with you. I'm excited to see all of you, and it's just been a thrill so far. I've learned so much. But here's the thing. I need to get this film out of the fortress, so it's not just emergency nurses seeing this film. I want the public to see this. We have lots of opportunities. We actually have little cards that ask you to be ambassadors for the project, and we will give you an opportunity to participate in getting this film out to the public. We're hoping that we'll be able to rent theaters and have you invite people from your community to join you as you really explain what the work is that you do and how important it is. So again, thank you. I hope you have a wonderful conference, and it's been great to be here.
I mean, thank you really doesn't convey adequately to Carolyn for the work that she's done, does it? I mean, her commitment to emergency nurses has been phenomenal and is going to make such a difference for us. The small samples you shared today tell a story that goes beyond the clinical side to the human side of our work. The nurses who opened their hearts for this film epitomize the hardworking and compassionate community we are, something that far too often goes unnoticed. We have several of those nurses with us today, and I'd like them to please join us on stage to be recognized. Kathleen Robinson, Kim Russo, Dee Dee Heinrich, Karina Molina, Kai Duangala, Bonnie Platt, Cheryl Hurst, Jennifer Brunsman, Travis B.D. Woodard, Monica Marr, Galena Chavez, Amy Summers, Nancy Pitcock, Liz Littlejohn, and from the Carolyn Jones team, Liz and Yaka. Thank y'all so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your stories with us.